The crowd was still cheering when Messi saw something that froze his blood cold. Ronaldo was just steps away from his car, and it was wired to explode. The grand charity gala shimmered under the opulent chandeliers of Madrid's most prestigious ballroom. It was the philanthropy event of the year, a convergence of global stars and philanthropic titans, all united under the banner of a noble cause. The air buzzed with the murmur of polite conversation, punctuated by the clinking of champagne flutes and the soft cadence of classical music. Photographers jostled for position, their flashes illuminating a constellation of dazzling gowns and impeccably tailored suits. Then, a hush fell, followed by a thunderous wave of applause as Cristiano Ronaldo, resplendent in a custom-made tuxedo, strode onto the stage. The spotlight found him instantly, bathing him in a theatrical glow. Cheers erupted, screams of adoration pierced the elegant ambience, and a barrage of camera flashes transformed the ballroom into a strobe-lit spectacle. He flashed his trademark smile, a perfect blend of charm and confidence, and began to speak, his voice resonating with practiced ease. Every eye in the sprawling hall was fixed on him, every face adorned with a beaming smile, captivated by his charisma. But there was one exception. Seated at a discreet table towards the rear, away from the immediate glare of the spotlight, was Lionel Messi. He offered a polite, almost practiced nod to those who greeted him, a faint, unconvincing smile playing on his lips. His eyes, however, were elsewhere, darting with an unsettling frequency towards the large monitor screens strategically placed around the venue. These screens, usually reserved for displaying donation tallies or live feeds of the stage, were currently showing a live, bird's-eye view of the VIP parking garage below. Specifically, they were focused on a sleek, luxury sports car, Cristiano Ronaldo's car. Something was profoundly wrong. It began as an insidious feeling, a cold tendril of unease coiling in his gut. It was the inexplicable, almost imperceptible shifts in the atmosphere, the fleeting expressions on faces that seemed just a shade too strained, the subtle movements that didn't quite fit the polished rhythm of the gala. Then the feeling solidified, morphing into a stark, undeniable truth as data, cold and hard, began to align with his intuition. The anonymous message he had received on his encrypted phone that very morning still haunted him, a phantom vibration against his palm. It had been brief, chillingly precise, and devoid of any identifiable sender. Keep an eye on CR7's car, 2315. Delay brings death. His initial reaction had been to dismiss it as a crude prank, a twisted joke from a rival fan or an overzealous journalist. Such bizarre messages weren't entirely
The peculiar movements of certain individuals he didn't recognize, lingering just a little too long in the shadows, their eyes scanning the security cameras. The subtle, almost imperceptible gaps in the usually ironclad security protocols. A momentary lapse here, a misplaced guard there. And now, the digital clock on his phone's lock screen glowed with an ominous red. 23:10. The time given in the message was drawing terrifyingly close. Every second that ticked by was a beat of a drum, echoing the growing panic in his chest. With each passing second, the frenetic thrum of Messi's heartbeat accelerated, pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. The elegant chatter, the celebratory music, the very air of the gala seemed to press in on him, amplifying his burgeoning terror. He needed to move, to act, but without drawing attention. In a room teeming with celebrities, security personnel, and an army of watchful eyes, any outward display of panic would be disastrous, potentially triggering a stampede, or worse, alerting the very people he suspected were involved. With a superhuman effort, he willed his features into a mask of calm, a slight, almost imperceptible tightening around his jaw, the only outward sign of the turmoil raging within. He rose from his chair with a casualness that belied the urgency gripping him, offering another non-committal nod to a passing dignitary. His movements were fluid, almost imperceptible, as he began to weave his way through the throng. heading towards the least conspicuous exit. He moved like a shadow, a specter among the glittering crowd, his presence melting into the background. No one seemed to notice his heightened tension, his sudden departure. The collective gaze remained fixed on the stage, on the magnetic figure of Cristiano Ronaldo. Once clear of the main ballroom, in a dimly lit corridor that led to the service exits, Messi quickened his pace. He pulled a small, discreet earpiece from his pocket, inserting it with practiced ease. His thumb flew across his phone screen, a rapid blur of motion as he scrolled through his contacts, past the familiar names of teammates and agents, until he landed on a name he rarely, if ever, had to call. Lucas, an old friend, a shadow operative from the Argentine Secret Service, a man who dealt in the world of whispers and hidden threats. The phone rang twice, then a click. Lucas's voice, usually calm and measured, crackled through the earpiece, laced with an unusual tremor of apprehension. "Messi, what's wrong? You never call this line unless it's an emergency." "Lucas," Messi whispered, his voice barely audible, a raw urgency vibrating beneath the strained calm. He could feel sweat trickling down his spine, a cold sensation against his skin. "I have a situation. It involves Ronaldo. His car. I received an anonymous tip." He relayed the message, the time, the growing certainty of a threat. "Before I get close to the car, is there anything you need to tell me? Anything at all?"
A strained silence stretched across the line, punctuated only by Lucas's ragged breathing. Then, the words came, each one a hammer blow to Messi's already racing heart. Lucas's voice was gravely serious, laced with an undeniable tremor of urgency. "Messi, this is bad. We've been tracking a new type of device. Based on the intelligence we have and the timing you gave me, there's a next-generation pressure-sensitive C4 device likely planted underneath his vehicle. It's designed to detonate if the engine is started or if there's any significant change in weight distribution. It's a particularly nasty piece of work, highly sophisticated. It can only be deactivated through a complex encryption system, a unique 5-digit code that changes every few seconds. We're trying to crack it now, but it's not easy. It's incredibly volatile." Messi froze, his breath catching in his throat. The gravity of the situation slammed into him with the force of a physical blow. He glanced at a small security monitor embedded in the wall of the corridor. On the screen, a chilling tableau unfolded. Ronaldo, oblivious to the silent death trap awaiting him, was beginning to make his way towards the very car in question. He was close, agonizingly close. The digital clock on the monitor blinked, an unforgiving red. 23:13. 2 minutes. 2 minutes until the designated detonation time. A terrifying realization dawned on him. He was alone in this. No time for elaborate plans. No time to wait for backup. He had to act. Now. He had a choice. Either take the monumental, life-threatening risk, throw caution to the wind and intervene, or live with the crushing burden of eternal regret, the knowledge that he could have prevented a catastrophe but chose not to. The choice, though terrifying, was clear. A primal surge of adrenaline coursed through Messi's veins, washing away the last vestiges of hesitation. He burst from the corridor, a blur of motion, a man possessed. He sprinted through dimly lit service corridors, his footsteps echoing wildly in the deserted passages. He took the emergency stairwell 3 steps at a time, his legs burning, his lungs screaming for air. Behind him, he could faintly hear the confused shouts of gala staff, their voices fading into the background as he descended deeper into the concrete labyrinth of the parking garage. They were calling out, probably asking why he was running, what was wrong, but their words were just a distant hum against the deafening roar of his own heart. The digital clock on his phone, now clutched in his sweaty hand, screamed 23:14, 1 minute, 60 seconds until the designated time. Cristiano Ronaldo, his face still flushed with the adulation of the crowd, was already in the expansive, brightly lit VIP section of the parking garage. He moved with an easy stride, a picture of relaxed confidence, his mind already drifting to the comforts of home after a long evening. He was just steps away from his sleek black sports car, its polished surface gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. His hand was already delving into his pocket, fingers searching for the familiar weight of his car keys. A faint,
almost imperceptible smile played on his lips as he anticipated the quiet drive home. It was in that precise, agonizing moment, just as his fingers brushed against the cold metal of his car key, that a voice, hoarse and strained, ripped through the silent hum of the parking garage. "Ronaldo!" The shout was raw, desperate, imbued with an urgency that pierced through Ronaldo's relaxed composure. He flinched, startled, his hand freezing in his pocket. He spun around, his eyes scanning the cavernous space, searching for the source of the unexpected cry. Messi was upon him in an instant, a whirlwind of motion. He had covered the distance between them with impossible speed, his chest heaving, his face slick with sweat, his hair plastered to his forehead. He skidded to a halt just inches from Ronaldo, practically colliding with him. Ronaldo's initial surprise quickly morphed into a growing unease as he took in Messi's disheveled appearance, his desperate eyes, the sheen of sweat that coated his face. Messi's usual composed demeanor had been replaced by a raw, unbridled panic. "Don't go near your car!" Messi gasped, struggling to catch his breath, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "It's a trap! A bomb!" Ronaldo blinked, his brow furrowing in confusion, then disbelief. "What are you talking about, Leo? Are you feeling all right?" His voice was laced with concern, a touch of bewilderment. He genuinely thought Messi might have had too much to drink, or perhaps was suffering from some form of nervous exhaustion. "No, I'm serious," Messi insisted, his voice rising, a tremor of pure terror rippling through it. "There's a bomb planted underneath your car. Listen to me, please. Just follow my instructions. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it directly. Just back away, slowly." He extended a trembling hand, gripping Ronaldo's arm with surprising strength, his fingers digging into the fabric of Ronaldo's suit jacket. Ronaldo's skepticism was palpable. His mind, accustomed to the theatricality of the football world, initially struggled to grasp the stark reality of Messi's words. A bomb? Here? Now? It seemed utterly preposterous, something out of a spy movie. But then he looked into Messi's eyes. They were wide with a stark, undeniable terror, unblinking and fixed on his. He saw the genuine fear, the desperate plea. He felt the tremor in Messi's hand, the cold sweat on his skin. This wasn't a game, not a prank, not some theatrical ploy. Messi, his quiet, reserved rival, would never play such a cruel joke. He knew Messi, and he knew that the fear in those eyes was terrifyingly real. A piercing electronic shriek suddenly echoed through the vast concrete. It was the general security alarm, triggered by some unseen event, or perhaps by Lucas, Messi's contact, as a desperate measure. The blaring siren added a chaotic, disorienting layer to the already tense atmosphere, signaling that their precious window of anonymity was rapidly closing. Through his earpiece, Lucas's voice, now strained and frantic, cut through the din. "Messi, they're on to us. The security system is tripped. I'm trying to override it, but it's asking for a 5-digit security code. We have an estimated 30 seconds before it detonates automatically, even if no one touches it." Messi instinctively pulled Ronaldo behind a thick concrete pillar, shielding him with his own body. From their precarious vantage point, he carefully peered around the edge of the pillar, his gaze darting to the underside of Ronaldo's car. And there it was. A small black box, barely visible in the shadows, clinging precariously to the undercarriage. A series of tiny, ominous red LED lights pulsed on its surface, counting down with terrifying precision. 17, 16, 15. The numbers were a cruel countdown to oblivion. Lucas's voice, now a desperate shout, tore through the earpiece. "I've got a potential code. First attempt. Try 92814. Messi, his fingers flying with a dexterity born of sheer terror, fumbled for the encrypted app on his phone, the one Lucas had instructed him to download for emergencies. He punched in the numbers, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He hit enter. A low, guttural growl of a negative tone emanated from the phone. "Invalid code," the automated voice stated flatly. The LED lights on the bomb continued their relentless march downward. 10, 9. "New code!" Lucas screamed, his voice hoarse with desperation. 47502, try it, now! Messi's fingers blurred across the screen. He entered the second set of numbers. A guttural groan from the phone. Invalid, 5, 4, 3. The LED lights pulsed with an accelerating urgency, their red glow a malevolent heartbeat in the dim light of the garage. The air was thick with tension, every breath held, every muscle coiled. This was it, the last chance. "Last code!" Lucas roared, his voice cracking with the strain, a sound of raw, unadulterated fear. 11372, hurry, it's the only one left. Messi slammed his thumb down on the screen, entering the final sequence. His eyes were wide, fixed on the rapidly blinking lights on the bomb. He hit enter. Time seemed to warp, to stretch into an agonizing eternity. The blaring alarm, the frantic shouting, the very beating of his heart, everything seemed to fall silent. A profound, unnerving stillness descended upon the parking garage, a breathless void where only the fate of two men hung in the balance. And then, the malevolent red LED lights on the...
One by one, they extinguished, plunging the small black box into silent darkness. The bomb was disarmed, inert. The wave of relief that washed over Messi was so overwhelming, so profound, that his legs gave way. He crumpled to his knees on the cold concrete floor, his body trembling uncontrollably, his mind reeling from the sudden release of unbearable tension. Beside him, Ronaldo, who had been instinctively covering his head with his hands, sank to the ground, his shoulders shaking, his face pale and etched with disbelief. They both remained there for a long moment, breathing in ragged, gasping breaths, the silent echo of the alarm still ringing in their ears. The aftermath was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Within minutes, the parking garage swarmed with armed security personnel, plainclothes officers, and bomb disposal experts. The area was cordoned off, lights were brightened, and a meticulous forensic investigation began. Despite the immediate and overwhelming response, a coordinated effort was clearly underway to control the narrative. The press, usually a ravenous beast sniffing out any hint of scandal or disaster, remained curiously unaware. No leaks, no frantic reports of a foiled terrorist attack. Everything was handled with an almost surgical precision, a clear indication that powerful forces were at play, working silently behind the scenes. As the initial shock began to subside and the details of the bomb were meticulously documented, Lucas called again. His voice, though still tinged with the lingering tension of the near disaster, was now sharper, more analytical. He was no longer just an old friend. He was an intelligence operative, relaying critical information. "Messi, Ronaldo," Lucas began, his voice low and serious. This wasn't a random act. And it wasn't just some disgruntled fan or a lone wolf. The group responsible for this, they're international, highly organized. Their code name is Zeta Unit. Messi's brow furrowed. Zeta Unit? I've never heard of them. You wouldn't have, Lucas replied, a grim note in his voice. They operate in the shadows. For years, their focus was primarily on political assassinations, destabilizing governments, influencing elections. But they've recently shifted targets. They're moving into a new arena, the shadowy world of sports financing. They want to control the vast sums of illicit money flowing through the global sports industry. They want to dictate outcomes, manipulate contracts, and leverage power through financial means. A cold dread settled over Messi and Ronaldo. This wasn't just about them. This was about something far larger, far more sinister. Lucas continued, his voice hardening. And they chose you two as targets because you're too independent, too free. You operate outside their control, outside their influence. You're symbols of integrity in a world they want to corrupt. By eliminating you, they send a message to anyone else who might stand in their way.
It's a power play, a declaration of war. Messi's eyes narrowed, a steely glint appearing in their depths. The anger was rising, cold and precise. So, this isn't just about a bomb. This is personal.
More personal than you can imagine, Lucas confirmed grimly. They made it personal the moment they chose you. Chapter 6. The Covenant of Silence. The incident was meticulously buried. No leaks reached the ravenous media. The next morning, as if nothing untoward had happened, both Messi and Ronaldo posted seemingly innocuous, positive tweets about the success of the charity gala, praising the attendees and the noble cause. The carefully curated image of normalcy was maintained, a thin veneer over a terrifying truth. The world, oblivious to the silent terror that had almost erupted in the heart of Madrid, went about its day. But that night late, long after the last of the gala guests had departed and the city had settled into a quiet hum, Messi and Ronaldo met again. Not at a football pitch, not at a press conference, but in the hushed, anonymous luxury of a penthouse suite in a discreet hotel, high above the sleeping city. For the first time in their storied, often contentious careers, they sat in silence, not as rivals, but as two men who had stared death in the face and by a miracle had emerged. There was no pretense, no posturing, no lingering shadow of their long-standing competition. The shared brush with mortality had forged an immediate, unspoken bond. Messi broke the silence, his voice a low whisper, almost lost in the vastness of the opulent room. If I hadn't warned you, this city would be mourning tonight. His voice was heavy with the weight of that almost future, the chilling realization of how close they had come to utter devastation. Ronaldo, usually so proud, so unyielding, simply bowed his head, a gesture of profound humility. He looked up, his eyes meeting Messi's, and for the first time, Messi saw a vulnerability he had never imagined in his rival. I owe you my life, Leo, a debt I can never truly repay. He paused, his gaze hardening, a flicker of something new, something dangerous, igniting in his eyes. But it's not just that, is it? Not just a life debt. We're targets. Both of us. Our enemies are now shared, and the people we thought we could trust, some of them might have betrayed us. The silence hung heavy between them, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the city. The reality of their situation settled over them like a shroud. This wasn't a game they could win on the field. This was a war fought in the shadows, against an unseen enemy, a ruthless organization that operated beyond the bounds of law and conventional morality. They were alone in this, united by a shared threat. Ronaldo finally straightened, a newfound resolve etched onto his features.
The covenant was sealed, unspoken yet understood. The greatest rivals had become unwilling allies. A week later, the initial shock had begun to recede, replaced by a tense, vigilant calm. Messi, back in the familiar comfort of his sprawling home, found a plain, unassuming envelope tucked under his front door. It bore no return address, no distinguishing marks. A cold premonition seized him as he tore it open. Inside, on a crisp white card, was a single, stark sentence, written in elegant, almost calligraphic script. You saved one, but you cannot save them all. Are you next? The words were a direct, chilling taunt, a reminder that the Zeta unit was still out there, watching, waiting, their invisible hand poised to strike again. The relief he had felt, the fleeting sense of security, evaporated instantly, replaced by a renewed surge of fear and anger. At the exact same time, miles away in his own heavily guarded mansion, Ronaldo doubled his security detail. Every access point was fortified, every camera lens sharpened, every guard on high alert. That night, for the first time in years, he didn't sleep in his own bed. Instead, he sat for hours in his children's rooms, watching them sleep, his heart aching with a fierce, protective love. His eyes scanned the darkened windows, his hand instinctively reaching for the pistol he had discreetly placed on the bedside table. The silence of the night was no longer peaceful. It was filled with unseen threats, whispered promises of future attacks. And now, they both knew. This was only the beginning of a long, brutal war,
A war fought not on the verdant fields of a football stadium, but in the dark, clandestine alleys of power and influence. A war without rules, a shadow game played for the highest stakes, their lives, their legacies, and perhaps the very soul of the sport they loved. Messi and Ronaldo were no longer just football legends. They were the top targets on a deadly hit list, and no one knew when the final whistle would blow in this invisible match